Right, everyone. We are here for the second segment, which is intestate succession, still dealing with wills, the testate part of things. But yeah, we now move on to the part of intestate, where someone passes away without a valid will. You will then die intestate effectively. For this segment, I thought it's better if I illustrate with this little board in the background, so you probably might not see my face, but you'll hear my voice, and I'll be speaking to you and showing you on this whiteboard behind me how it practically the effect of intestate succession. Right, so what you guys need to know is need to know who gets what when we in a scenario of someone passing away without a valid will. Okay, there's a couple rules, right? Let's start over here. When we speak of someone passing away, someone can leave behind a spouse, they can leave behind brothers and sisters, they can leave behind children, grandchildren, and they can leave behind parents, obviously. So when faced with a question about intestate succession, they would give you a scenario, perhaps saying, this person passes away leaving an estate valued X amount. Let's make the estate valued 1 million. Okay, that's the estate we have here. Now, they would say he leaves behind or she leaves behind children, parents, grandparents, brothers, sisters, doesn't matter what the question may be. But the end result of the question would be who receives what. Okay, so we need to sit down and do a little drawing of what the question is telling us so that we can figure out who's getting what. Couple rules to remember. When we speak about intestate succession, we speak about descendants, which is everyone going down. We speak about ascendants, which is everyone going up. And then we speak about collaterals, which is everyone going sideways. All right. So a couple rules to follow and keep in mind. You apply these rules, I don't see how things can go wrong. First things first. Wife and children, or husband and children, so in other words, spouse and children, always inherit first. If you have a spouse, or if you leave behind children, or if you leave behind spouse and children, forget about what the rest of the question is telling you, because they will then inherit, no one else, spouse and children. So if I say, for example, someone passes away and leaves behind a spouse and leaves behind 2 children, okay? And there's 1 million in the estate. Importantly, we'll know that if this person has ascendants, a father and a mother, or collaterals, which is brothers and sisters, we'll forget about them. Only they will inherit. Okay? If there's 1 million in the estate, you would agree that would be roughly a third each, which is 333,000 each. Okay? So that is rule 1. Spouse and children will inherit. Forget about everyone else. Okay? Rule 2 plays a part when it comes to rule 1. Okay? Rule 2 says a spouse will inherit the greater of 250,000 rand or an equal share. So let's make this practically speaking. If we have 1 million rand in the estate and there's a spouse and 2 children left behind, okay, the spouse receives the greater of 250k or an equal share. An equal share between the 3 of them would be 333,000 rand. So you agree that's greater than 250, so they each will receive 333,000 rand. Okay, but if I said the estate was worth 450,000 rand, okay, that would mean 150,000 rand for each person. Okay, but let's look at rule 2, which says spouse receives the greater of 250 or an equal share. An equal share with an estate of 450,000 rand would be 150,000 rand each, which is less than 250,000 rand. Okay, meaning the spouse would then need to receive 250,000 rand because that is greater than an equal share. If the spouse receives 250,000 rand, the remainder of the estate is 200,000 rand. Okay, that 200,000 rand will then be divided between the 2 children, 100,000 rand each between the 2 of them. Okay, that is the effect of intestate succession. Now, it's quite obvious that you as the deceased might not have wanted things that way, but that is the rules. Okay, so rule 1 and 2, spouse and children go first, and spouse receives the greater of 250,000 rand or an equal share between them. Okay, now let's say there is no spouse or there is no children. We now move on to rule 3, which is who inherits next. The next people to inherit would be the ascendants, mother and father. Okay, that's rule 3. Mom and dad are next in line to inherit. Okay, so if there's $1 million, it will be 500,000 rand each. Okay, when it comes to ascendants, it's very important to make sure they are always divided. What I mean by that is you always treat them separately, because you may have a scenario where you have no ascendants, okay? Then no mother and father that hasn't predeceased you. Then obviously rule 3 can't come into effect. Or you might have both that are still alive at the time you pass away. Rule 3 comes into effect. 500, 500, okay? However, another scenario could be that maybe mother is still alive, but the father has predeceased. Okay, what happens then? Okay? You can't just simply say, then this 1 million, everything goes towards the mother. No. What could happen is, or what the laws provide for, is that descendants of the deceased can step in their place. Okay, so let's say I had collaterals. Okay, that's the sideways ones. Let's say I have a brother and a sister. Okay, you agree they are descendants of the father. Okay, so the question is 1 million, there's no spouse, no children, but there's a surviving mother, and you have a brother and sister. So we know rule 1 and 2 falls away, there's no spouse and children. We go to rule 3, there's a parent, so we're on rule 3. Mother and father, 500,000 rand each. We can give mother 500,000 rand because mother is still alive. Okay, but father's 500,000 rand is an issue because father is predeceased. Okay, so we go on to rule 4 then. Rule 4 is that the descendants can step in place of the deceased ascendant. Okay, brother and sister will then take father's inheritance of 500,000 rand, which is effectively 250,000 rand each. Okay, that makes sense. Children, spouse, ascendants. If one has passed away, brother and sister can take that spot. If both have passed away, rule 3 would obviously fall away, and we'll go straight to rule 4, which is the descendants of the parents will inherit the parents' amount. Will inherit if I took away mother over here, we'd be in a scenario of 1 million will then have to go to brother and sister. Okay. Now, it becomes a little bit tricky if we start speaking about half brothers and half sisters. Okay. Because we can effectively have a scenario where mother and father have children at other places. And if you look at your books, they'll speak about full blood relative inherits with the full hand, where the half sibling inherits with the half hand. So we need to understand what that means. Okay, so we can sort of deem this next one rule 5. Okay, so we have the scenario of the deceased person. Okay, there is no spouse and no children. Okay? There is a mother and there is a father. Okay, from them I was born, the deceased. Okay, but I have a brother and I have a sister. Full brother and full sister. That's the scenario. Okay, but I add to that and I say I have a step brother from my mother's side. That's the question. Okay, they'll say deceased passed away. Let's leave the 1 million. We speak about 1 million there in the estate. Okay, and they'll say survived by the mother and the father, then we know the million would go to the mother and father, 500,000 each, or they would say the parents have passed away. Okay, so let's do an example. We have a brother, sister, and a half brother from the mother's side. Okay, let's say the father is still alive. Okay, according to the previous rules, we know the father would then get half, 500,000 rand. That takes the father out of the picture. We have sorted him. The mother, on the other hand, is predeceased. What are we going to do with her 500,000 rand? We know the descendants of the mother can inherit. What are, and remember, you can only inherit through blood. You must be a blood descendant. So this mother's 500,000 rand, Who is a blood descendant of the mother? You would agree that the brother, the full brother and full sister is blood relatives. But you would agree that this stepbrother, this half brother from the mother's side is also a blood relative. Therefore, these three will share in the 500,000 rand. It's about 167k each. Okay, nice and simple. But let's turn it around. Now is going to come the rule of the half hand and the full hand. Let's say the mother is still alive, but the father is predeceased. Okay, so the mother will get the 500,000 rand. Now we've got to do something with the father's 500,000 rand. Okay, now let's have a look at the blood relatives to the father, the descendants. You would agree the brother is of the bloodline of the father, and the full sister is the bloodline of the father. On this side, my half sister from my mother's side has no blood relation to the father. Therefore, this half brother from my mother's side cannot inherit from the father, meaning the full brother and sister will go 250,000 rand each. This half brother from my mother's side can only inherit through my mother. Okay, so this person will inherit nothing in the scenario where the mother is still alive but the father is predeceased. Okay, we can take this further and we can make them both predeceased. Okay, what happens if both are predeceased? We have the million. We know the rule, step 3's rule is it goes 500,000, 500,000. Okay, but now I'm saying they are both predeceased. One doesn't simply just take the million and divide it amongst the collaterals for rule 5. What you have to do here is still treat the parents as separate. Okay, so let's have a look at the scenario. Let's start with the father. The father is entitled to 500,000 rand. He's predeceased. We have a full brother, full sister, and a half brother from the mother's side. We've already established the half brother has no blood relation to the father, so these two full brothers and sisters will inherit through the father. Okay, so they will get 250,000 rand each. My brother gets 250 from the father, and my sister gets 250k from the father. Okay, father is sorted. Now we move across to the mother. The mother's 500,000 rand needs to be distributed. Once again, the sister can inherit, the brother can inherit, but now my half brother can also inherit because he is blood related to my mother. Okay, so the 500,000 rand here will be divided 167,000 plus minus to the brother, to the sister, and to the half brother. That is the full hand and the half hand. Why is it the full hand? Because my full brother and sister took twice. They took from the father and they took from the mother. The half hand, being the half brother, half sister, could only take from the blood relative. So this person, the half brother, could only take once, half. Not from the father, but could take a share from the mother. In essence, that is what they are trying to tell you in the books. Okay? So very important that we establish the rules when drafting an interstate sum, because you'll probably get tested on this. I'll give you a scenario. Do you a little drawing of how the family tree looks. Remember, if there's spouse and there's children, they inherit. And remember, the rule 2 goes with 1. The spouse inherits the greater of 250k or an equal share. Right? If there's no spouse and children, we go upwards, ascendants. Mother and father inherit. Okay? Rule 4 and 5 only comes into effect if there is if one of my parents are deceased. Okay? If the parents are deceased, blood descendants inherit through them, which are the collaterals. That is my brothers and sisters. Okay? They inherit from each parent respectively. Like I said, if there's 1 million, it's 500k each. If the father has died, the blood descendants of the father can step in their place. The mother will still get the 500k, and vice versa. If both have passed away, we still treat them separately, 500, 500, but they're predeceased, so we let the descendants inherit through them. Right? Full blood relatives or full siblings, full hand, half brother, half sister, half hand, because they're just taking from the respective blood relative. Okay. I hope that assists you. The rule can go on. We can have a number 6 and a number 7. Number 6 would be, what happens if there is no spouse, there is no children, the mother and father have predeceased, and I don't have any brothers, sisters, half brothers, or half sisters. Okay. Then we go to rule 6. Rule 6 would simply be, it would then be, the estate will then be divided amongst the nearest blood relative. Okay. Which would be a cousin or an uncle or an aunt that can then come and lay a claim to the estate. Okay. But there is scenarios where no one lays a claim to the estate, where they can't find any blood relatives. That will take us to rule 7, which is very important to know as well. If there's no one to come and lay a claim to my intestate estate, so I'm now on rule 7. If no one can do that, what will happen is my estate will then be put into a guardian's fund. Okay? It will then lie in this guardian's fund, the value of the estate, for a period of 30 years. Meaning any blood relative will have 30 years to come and claim my estate. If no one comes and claims the estate within a 30-year period, then my estate will then be forfeited. Okay. So if no one comes, goes into a guardian fund, you have 30 years to claim. If not, it then gets forfeited. Okay. That is pretty much the different rules, how it goes through if your estate dies intestate. As you can see, the way it works for a lot of people might not be favorable or not the way they would have wanted their estate to be divided. That is why we said during the law of testate succession that there's an assumption the person would have wanted to die with a will. So if there is a will, they'll always try and interpret that will as far as they can. But if there is no valid will and they can't interpret it, we'll have to come across to the law of intestate succession. All right. I hope that helps a bit. And when you read through your notes, it's very well put out in your notes. I had a bit of a look at it earlier. It says exactly the same thing. I just wanted to show you practically how to work out. And like I said, very important when you do get this question that you sit and you draw the picture out so that you can see who inherit what. It just makes it a lot easier to determine. All right. That is pretty much estates. Intestate succession. We have now concluded wills. We'll then move over to estates, which we'll divide into 2 sections as well, being the theory, which I'll basically just show you how or what the process is to wind up estate. And the last one will try and have a look at as much as we can as how the L&D account works. All right.